and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and today we're going to be answering a question from our audience on how did China manage to bridge the technological gap and become a leader in high-tech manufacturing and industries such as aerospace, defense, and electronics. And the simple first answer I'll give you is they copied some of these things. I talk about this in other videos, but why would you reinvent the wheel if someone has already invented it? They're a century behind in terms of technology due to the century of humiliation that they went through, where the United Kingdom fed Chinese people a ton of opium, destroyed their nation, attacked their nation on multiple different occasions. Colonial powers took various port cities in order to use it for their own trade while getting the Chinese population more and more addicted to opium. And so China, being so far behind, they have every right to copy certain technologies. They did it in primarily completely legal ways, and they did it in ways that the United States has previously done in order to be the current world superpower that it is. The United States did copy from countries like the United Kingdom as well, and even during the Cold War, they obviously used espionage and other techniques to get access to and even reverse engineer various Soviet technologies. So copying is a tried and true strategy. I mentioned this and I will keep reiterating this, but why would you reinvent the wheel if someone has already invented it? And so China, one way they bridged this technological gap and became a leader was they had to make sure they catch up first before they can become a leader, and so they copied some of the things. So another point related to that, how did China manage to bridge the technological gap and become a leader in high-tech manufacturing and industries such as aerospace, defense, and electronics? Well, they recognize the benefits of their nation, and one of those major benefits, especially to capitalistic systems, is capitalistic systems need demand for their products. And so China, what they did was, in exchange for access to their large market, their large homogeneous market, they demanded that technology is given to them from corporations. So if you want access, you have to give us knowledge, technology, things like that from your organization. Again, this is a completely legal thing. These are agreements made that if these corporations want access to a large homogeneous market, such as the Chinese population, then they need to give up some of their knowledge, some of their technology. And it makes a lot of sense because, one, you want a large population because you want a lot of demand for your goods. And two, ideally, you'd like a homogeneous population because China is over 90% Han Chinese. Whereas a country like India, which recently surpassed China in terms of population, they're not as homogeneous of a population. And the reason you want a homogeneous population is because of the fact that it's easier to market and advertise goods to people who are relatively similar. And so if you want to get people, models, actors, various advertisers to market goods, you can get someone who looks like a Han Chinese person, and that resonates with people because people want to have goods that people similar to them are using. That's just a basic aspect of conformity. People want other things that other people similar to them have. And so you want access, if you're a capitalistic organization, you want access to a large homogeneous population. And that is not to say that everyone who is similar in one dimension thinks the same way or anything like that. It is just saying that as if you're trying to share a product with someone or a group of people, then you would share products in such a way that it resonates with that specific portion of the population. The more homogeneous that population is, the easier it is to market to that specific group of people. And so having access to this large homogeneous population in China was extremely enticing, and it was enticing enough to these various corporations that they were willing to give up access to their knowledge and technology. And so China used that. They used the advantage of their large market in order to get this technology. It makes complete sense. Obviously, completely legal. It was put into various agreements, and these companies didn't have to agree to it. If they thought it wasn't a fair deal that giving up some of their technology in order to have access to this market, they just could have chose to not work in the Chinese market. And a few companies did that, but not very many. And so they recognized that they were actually getting a very good deal where China was getting access to this technology, but they were getting access to the market. And I think some of these companies were arrogant in that regard, where they probably said to themselves, well, yes, China's getting access to this technology, but they're never going to be a true competitor to us. Because for the longest time, people thought of China as the world sweatshop. And so the fact that China was actually able to do something with that technology and be competitors in pretty much every industry, they're competitive in every domain of trade possible right now. That probably was a surprise to some people, but again, these were completely legal agreements, and China can get access to knowledge and technology through these agreements. It's completely fair. Another point is, how did China manage to bridge the technological gap and become a leader in high-tech manufacturing industries such as aerospace, defense, electronics? Government connections. This cannot be emphasized enough, but there are certain governments in the world that were very dissatisfied with the direction of the world. Russia is one I will give an example of here. And Russia, after the fall of the Soviet Union and the, I would say, losing of the Cold War, they inherited all of the technology, all of the know-how from the Soviet Union, which, despite them having a far lower GDP than the United States, they invested quite a bit in technology, in their military, things like that. And so there was quite a bit of know-how that Russia had. And Russia really wanted to be a part of the European Union. They really wanted to be a part of NATO even, which previously was the alliance against them, but they wanted to be integrated into the West. And the West really lied to them, completely screwed over Russia. The current state of affairs, while shocking that war is coming back to Europe, is completely understandable from a Russian perspective just because of how they were treated after the fall of the Soviet Union. And because of Russia being betrayed in multitudes of ways, they could easily give China access to their technology, to their know-how, in exchange for infrastructure projects, in exchange for financial support, things like that. Things that Russia didn't really have access to, particularly whenever America would sanction Russia and block Russia from entering and competing in various markets. And so China got access to all of that knowledge, all that know-how from the Soviet Union, and sort of inherited it because Russia didn't really have much it could do with it because of its declining population and all the problems it had domestically. And so China managed to become a world leader pretty quickly because of those government connections with places like Russia, which were very dissatisfied with the New World Order that came about after the Cold War. Another point worth mentioning in terms of how did China manage to bridge the technological gap and become a leader in high-tech manufacturing industries, such as aerospace, defense, and electronics, was individual connections. It cannot be emphasized enough how dissatisfied various very intelligent people are in the West with the direction places like America are going. I personally know a lot of people in various industries, engineers, software programmers, designers, various people with a lot of technical know-how who either lost jobs due to things like offshoring, or they were treated very poorly because they were because of their identity. Because in America, it's becoming more and more common for things like whether you're a straight white Christian male or some other identity groups, that's becoming a more and more salient characteristic. And so organizations are actively looking to have fewer straight white Christian males within their organizations, and that's led to a lot of dissatisfied people. And if you have former United States Air Force pilots who are not under non-disclosure agreements after a certain point, who are able to talk about their expertise and know-how, then they can go to China and just be consultants. And that's what you're seeing quite a bit, where sure, people in private industries or within the government are sometimes under non-disclosure agreements either for a few years in order to make sure that they can't go to competitors, or for their entire lifetime. But there is quite a bit of know-how that is not under non-disclosure agreements that people can talk about at least after a certain amount of years. And so a lot of these people are going to China and are acting as consultants, giving up Western know-how, Western technology, because of the fact that they after a certain point, realized that they didn't have a future in the West because the West was going out of its way to say, we don't want people who are white. We don't want people who are straight. We don't want people who are Christians. We don't want people who are males to be in various sectors of the economy. And that led to a lot of people who were dissatisfied, and they just brought their know-how, they brought their expertise to places like China, and that allowed China to advance far more quickly than it otherwise would be able to. And China understands this. They understand the amount of dissatisfaction there, and they're fully willing to support these people with the know-how, with the technical expertise in order to get access to that information. And the last point I'll make here, how did China manage to bridge the technological gap and become a leader in high-tech manufacturing and industries such as aerospace, defense, and electronics? A lot of these were copying or getting technology from abroad, but it cannot be emphasized enough that China, yes, that allowed China to reach parity, reach comparability, equivalency with these other countries, but for China to get ahead in various industries and become a leader, a pioneer in those industries, it had to innovate itself. It had to be the best at something. And so China has actually done a very good job of creating an innovation ecosystem. Their government provides subsidies for various parts of the economy that are of strategic importance to the country, and that allows private investors, various organizations, to know what directions they should innovate in order to be successful, in order to get various subsidies, various funding sources. And so China has actually done a really good job of a planned economy, creating this innovation ecosystem. The way I like to describe it is you could have very haphazard development like in the West, where it's like a bush just growing chaotically in whatever direction makes the most sense, the direction it can grow in the fastest. But in China, it's almost like having a gardener, where you kind of prune parts of the tree, parts of the bush, and you have it grow in certain directions to make it look the best, to make it harmonious, to make it grow in certain ways that are the most beneficial, the most pleasing to the gardener. And so China, the government of China, has acted as a gardener. They've managed to take that ecosystem and foster it in such a way that they're able to innovate in various sectors that are important for them to innovate in. And so they have reached equivalence with Western governments in a lot of ways, and then they've innovated in order to get ahead of Western governments that are not as strategic in terms of how they prioritize various parts of the economy. And so China, I would say, is doing an excellent job across the board, and they've used every kind of method in their toolbox in order to get ahead, and they've used them very effectively. And so that would be my answer to this question on how did China manage to bridge the technological gap and become a leader in high-tech manufacturing industries such as aerospace, defense, and electronics. They've used every tool in the toolbox to do so, and they've been very effective at it. So if you like this video, please actually like the video. And if you want to hear more content from me, please subscribe to our channel for more content. I'll be back later with more questions and answers and more live streams. So thank you for sticking with me, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.